#1 in Western Washington, with coverage you can count on. Broadcasting in HD TV from Digital Studio A. King 5 News at 5.
After a day's delay, her long ride home to Canada now nearly at an end. You're looking at Springer, the orca whale, on board her private boat. Tonight, the picture-perfect move from beginning to end. The race to a reunion is our top story. And as of this moment, Springer is now reportedly just a few minutes away from arriving in the waters off North Vancouver Island.
It has been a long day for the baby whale, and understandably, she's getting a little restless. King 5's Glenn Farley is live in Telegraph Cove, Canada, where everyone is anxiously awaiting Springer's arrival. Glenn.
Well, this has been the biggest event around here for a long time, Mimi, that is for sure. And right now we are looking at less than a half an hour before the Nichols brothers high-speed jet-powered catamaran is due to arrive at Dong Chong Bay on Hansen Island, mere miles from where I am standing right now. Meanwhile, on board this craft today, Springer is housed in an 18-foot long by 5.5-foot wide tank. The biggest goal has been to keep her calm and to keep her cool. They want to keep her in water that is below about 55 degrees. At one point, they had to stop in Campbell River, about 100 miles south of here, and load the catamaran up with 100 bags of ice and block ice, cubed ice and block ice, in order to keep her cool. Meanwhile, here up near Telegraph Cove, there is very good news, because today scientists were able to get confirmation that the A24 group, this is a subgroup to the overall A pod, this consists of Springer's grandmother, her closest relative, and this is the group that they wish to introduce her to. If not the A24s, then the A11s we showed you last night. Meanwhile, Gary Chittum was out this morning as Springer was loaded on board.
Springer started her morning like many of us, with a shower. The experts watched her every move last night as they prepared her for the transfer.
She still looks great, she's still ready to go, and she was pretty lively this morning again, so I think she's pretty anxious to get going.
She didn't have to wait long, and when handlers used a crane to drop in the specially designed sling, the young orca calmly slid right in. She barely wiggled during the transfer from her pen to the holding tank on the boat. Through it all, she stayed much more calm than the people involved in the operation.
A bit of a laid-back whale, because she certainly, she hasn't been in captivity for 20 years. She's not used to humans, and yet she takes hands-on care and going into the sling and into the box just very quietly and very smoothly.
Moments later, the happy handlers waved goodbye as they left Manchester for the long trip north. The various government agencies praised each other's cooperation, but at times over the last month it did get rocky. So today, U.S. officials seemed thrilled to hand over the whale and the paperwork to the Canadians.
One live A73 Orca orca whale. Here are our immigration papers. Delighted to turn it over to Marilyn Joyce. Marilyn?
Thanks, Bob. Wow.
Thank you.
Really...
Believe it or not, Springer actually has immigration papers, 2 sets of it. This was never a simple operation, a sea of paperwork and all kinds of potential foul-ups along the road. But in the end, the people and the whale all cooperated. Reporting from Manchester, Gary Chittum, King 5 News.
Again, we're less than 30 minutes away from the expected arrival of the jet-powered catamaran, and again to Dong Chong Bay. Everything seemed to be going very well. There was some rough water that they were on a little bit further down Johnstone Strait, and some wind. We got a little bit of wind here, but the seas have been very calm all day today. That's a very good sign. It was cloudy earlier. You can see once again that the sun has popped out here, so everything is looking very, very good late this afternoon. Live in Telegraph Cove, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
Glenn Farley, where Springer is just minutes away now.
And the catamaran is speeding very close to Vancouver Island. Let's check in now with someone who is on that boat to get a first-hand account of exactly what's happening. Let's check in now with John Beath, who is a photographer on the Catalina jet. John, what can you tell us right now?
Well, we're coming up on our final destination. I can't believe how smooth the ride has been. Even through the rough water, this boat handled it perfectly. And until we went through the rough water, you know, it was just amazing. Through the rough water, it was so smooth. But you look outside and you see 30-knot winds, white caps, but the whale was totally calm, and it's a smooth ride for it.
So, John, what did you have to do? What did people do to keep Springer calm during this long ride?
They were petting it and making sure that it was wet, but really nothing. It's a calm ride for it. This is the best vessel in the entire world to move this whale to its final destination.
Did Springer make any noises or otherwise signal her like or dislike of this trip?
From what I've been told, she was quite pleasant, and she was making vocalizations that were happy vocalizations. So she's been very calm. I'm surprised that it's been so smooth.
Sounds great. So far, so good. And just now, a few minutes away from reaching Telegraph Cove, Vancouver Island, where Springer will be in her new pen for the time being. And stay with King 5 for continuing coverage of Springer's return to Canada. We'll bring you any new video as soon as it comes in, and we'll have a live update at 5:30.
Finally, Springer, the orphan baby whale who captured not only Seattle's heart, but America's when she adopted Puget Sound Ferries as her surrogate mom. Today, Springer was sent home first class. But as KING TV's Jim Foreman reports, it's still not clear her family will take her back.
Moving day for Springer, the 2-year-old killer whale. Today, gingerly loaded into a sling, then hoisted onto a high-speed ferry for the trip from Seattle to home, the chilly Canadian waters off of Vancouver Island. It's all an attempt to finally reunite her with her family.
She's doing great. She's doing excellent. She's riding really comfortably.
For 6 months, Springer has been frolicking in the waters of Puget Sound off of Seattle, 400 miles from the Canadian Cove where marine biologists believe her native pod or family of whales lives. The scientists think when Springer's mother died, she became separated from her pod and swam south. Springer, it seems, took a liking to the Washington State ferries, swimming alongside them, seeming to adopt the boats as surrogate moms. But scientists worried Springer, already sick with a skin condition, could get hurt in the busy boat traffic of Puget Sound. So $500,000 was raised to send her back home. Now, after a month of medical treatment and a 60-pound-a-day diet of fish, Springer has been given a clean bill of health.
If she's healthy and seems physically fit and not too stressed out from the journey, she's basically ready.
So in a bold move never tried before, scientists will release the Orca as her grandmother and family swim by up the northeast tip of Vancouver Island.
Maybe it'll take weeks, or maybe she'll bond right up and then separate again until we get her up there, drop the net, and let her do whatever she's going to do along with the wild whales.
The experts admit the move is risky. Whale pods are tight-knit, even speaking their own language. Can Springer adapt? Will the other whales accept her?
It's up to her, and none of us can do anything about that. We're all going to be watching right along with the rest of the world to see what happens.
Waiting to see if you really can go home again, even if you are a killer whale. Jim Foreman for NBC News, Seattle.
And that's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thanks for watching. I'm John Sigenthaler in New York, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow night.
#1 in Western Washington, with coverage you can count on. Broadcasting in HD TV from Digital Studio A. King 5 News at 6:30.
Everything's set up north. The pens are ready. The fish are ready.
It's all going swimmingly. Springer the Orca calmly gets in her sling. Caretakers hold their breath.
You're always like, well, it's up in the air. You're really happy when it comes back down in the transport.
Then she's off in her own private boat, trying to make her way home. It's our top story. And finally, after a day of delay and a long day today, the moment we've been waiting for is here. Springer has just arrived off Hansen Island in British Columbia.
And that's where her next pen is, and we have word tonight that she could be released and reunited with her pod as early as tomorrow. It's been a long day for this young whale who left early this morning from Manchester and has been on a high-speed boat ever since. King 5's Glenn Farley is live in Telegraph Cove tonight, close to where this Orca has arrived. Glenn?
I'll tell you, Mimi, it has been one day here that people in this part of Canada, in fact, all along the west coast, will never forget. In fact, some of the good news was spotted this morning. We'll show you these pictures here of Springer's family, the 824 group led by her grandmother. This is the first priority group to try and release her to, because she is the most closely related to this particular group of whales. However, there is another group of whales that's also here, known as the A11s, that have been actually hanging out here in Blackfish Sound and in Johnstone Strait for several weeks. And this is very good news, and hopefully will mean a very quick reunion here. Meanwhile, the Catalina Jet, the Nichols brothers boat, has speeded up out of Puget Sound from Manchester, having had some problems yesterday that delayed that trip just a little bit too long to be able to make the trip yesterday. But it has made that trip absolutely very, very well today. They decided to stop in Campbell River and get ice and a little more fuel, but they bought 100 bags of ice and ice blocks in order to keep the whale cool. They want to keep her below 55 degrees. In fact, they've been trying to keep that temperature down so she's acclimated to the water temperature up here in Canada, which is cooler than it has been in Puget Sound. The ship has docked at the cove at Dongchong Bay. This is where another net pen setup is established that has also some food next door. And this is the arrival as it is coming into Dongchong Bay. Now they have had, because the Catalina Jet is 144 feet, draws a little too much water, they're actually having to lift Springer off the Catalina Jet out of that blue tank you see on the second deck, put her onto a smaller boat, a smaller barge to float her into Dongchong Bay, which is very quiet, is in the perfect place they believe this reunion can happen, and then she will be transferred into that net pen. And as I say, the First Nations tribes here have caught 75 salmon, fresh Pacific salmon that are in that pen swimming around. So dinner has already been served. The plan is to get her stabilized, and what they're waiting for is the right opportunity. They want to have the A24s within at least listening range for her, and Orca calls can travel a long way under the water over a distance of several miles, more preferably where they are close enough to where she could actually see them very quickly. So that's all part of the judgment call. So it's not over yet. This reunion still has to happen. Live in Telegraph Cove, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
All right, Glenn, thank you very much. And it sounds like her family's in place. All the pieces of this puzzle, this saga of getting her home is in place. So we'll have to keep you posted and see what happens.
#1 in Western Washington, with coverage you can count on. Broadcasting in HD TV from Digital Studio A. King 5 News at 11.
Back home at last, the orphaned killer whale who wandered Puget Sound. Springers dash north to Canada, broken by the sudden dramatic need for an emergency ice run. And Orca's Odyssey is tonight's top story. An odyssey everyone is hoping will now end with a happy whale pod / family reunion.
The trip back home went off without a hitch today, with the exception of the pit stop for ice. Tonight, Springer is back in her pod's home waters, and experts say her reunion could happen very soon. King 5's Glenn Farley is live in Telegraph Cove, British Columbia tonight. And Glenn, what a day.
It has been what a day, and if you can believe this, and I think people didn't sort of wake up to this fact until later, that it's been 1 month to the day that she was rescued from Puget Sound. She was nursed back to health. Now she's home. On board the Catalina Jet heading to Canada. Springer sounds well.
I'm sure she's a little confused, you know, but she's riding very well. Her respirations are good.
It all seems to be going just fine. The Catalina Jet is running near top speed, 40 miles per hour, steered with a lever the size of your bathroom faucet.
Going great, the boat's running good, the whale's riding nicely, so we're having a great time.
But there's a problem, the heat. Maybe the people on board are wearing jackets, but for an orca comfortable in 50-degree water, things are a little toasty.
The water actually is warmer than we had expected, so we're having to add a lot more ice to keep her nice and comfortable at the temperature she likes.
However, this is the last of the ice, leading to an unscheduled stop in Campbell River, 80 miles south of home. for 100 bags and blocks loaded in an ice brigade.
Maybe we're 200 now, I don't know.
And the final sprint is on with escort to Hansen Island. And before you know it, the jet is sitting outside of Dongchong Bay, and Springer is lifted up once again, this time onto a smaller boat designed to travel into shallower waters. Then she goes into the water herself.
Manage with it? That went fantastic. It's just wonderful. Got a great blood sample, nice little biopsy. Look at this.
Splashing and frolicking in another temporary net pen with tonight's dinner, some 75 fresh salmon, completing her journey home. Now, the journey home is really just the second to the last step. The last step is her actual reunification, the attempted reunification with her home pod. This is what one of the experts had to say tonight.
Once the veterinarians have given us the green light that she's got the clean bill of health, then we would be ready for the right opportunity to let the net down and let her out in the proximity of her pod.
Now, her pod, the closest pod, is the A24 subgroup. This is headed by her grandmother. That is the group we really would like to release her to first, if not then the A11s, and then to the A pod in general. The A24 is only confirmed to be here this morning, so this is very good timing indeed. Live in Telegraph Cove, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
Glenn, thank you. Springer's handlers described today's operation to move her as picture perfect.
#1 in Western Washington, with coverage you can count on. Broadcasting in HD TV from Digital Studio A. King 5 News at 5.
A perfect finish to a month-long mission. Springer, the orphaned orca, nursed back to health in Puget Sound. Then Saturday, moved back to her home waters off Vancouver Island. A lengthy, painstaking, complex, delicate operation, and rated by all a smashing success. Tonight, even more good news.
They said they could confirm she had been released. She was with the pod traveling east.
Springer's long-awaited family reunion is our top story. And as you can see, for whales and for people, the celebration is underway just off Vancouver Island.
That's where a mission involving 2 countries, dozens of people, and an orphaned orca ends up more successful than anyone could have ever imagined. King 5's Darren Watkins is live where Springer's odyssey began, with more on her journey home. But we begin tonight with Glenn Farley with video just in of Springer's reunion with her family pod. Glenn?
Well, right now it looks like what they had hoped for all along has actually happened. Let's go right to that tape.
No, go ahead.
This is the moment.
Yes!
Springer is free. Free to reunite with her pod.
So they could confirm she had been released, and she was with the pod traveling east.
The rendezvous with the A24 and the A11 groups, her closest relatives. But before release, she is equipped with a suction cup transmitter, so scientists know where she goes for as long as the transmitter can hang on.
You can track it with radio tracking gear, so you know she's here, you know she's there. Then in addition, the tag records the depth and time, so it would record her dives.
Just hours after Springer was put into the net pen, it was like she knew she was home. She was very active, breaching and calling out. These pictures taken this morning. But it all started out in the middle of the night. At Orca Lab, Dr. Paul Spong was listening to the network of hydrophones tracking the whales.
When they got within acoustic range of Springer, it was just amazing what happened. She was calling, they were calling, there were just beautiful, clear, crystal calls on both sides. She was breaching in the pen. It was a really exciting moment.
It was a very exciting moment. In fact, it's a very electrified atmosphere around here at Telegraph Cove, I can tell you. We'll see how her progress goes as she's tracked. But so far, this looks like a complete success. Live in Telegraph Cove, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
Glenn, thank you. This long journey began 6 months ago with the appearance of an orphaned whale along the Vashon ferry route.
A little orca way off course, too far from home. King 5's Darren Watkins is live at the Fauntleroy dock near where Springer's story began, right, Darren?
It certainly did. This is where it all started here. Last January, a young 2-year-old orca suddenly appeared. No one's really sure why she came here or why she picked this spot. She just suddenly appeared, but tonight, she's back home. Shaking a ceremonial rattle decked out in tribal masks, the Namgis First Nations tribe welcomes Springer back to her native waters. For them, it's the return of one of their own.
Who knows? One of these creatures may be a relative of ours, and so I think it's just natural for us to welcome this orca.
Springer's return a welcome sight, not just to researchers, but to those gathered on the shore as well.
Never was really convinced I'd see this happen, where she'd actually get back up here, you know.
With Springer's return, the champagne begins to flow. A major hurdle has been overcome.
Here's to step 2, 1 more to go.
That final step, returning Springer to her family pod. As soon as she hit the water, Springer began calling out. An unexpected development that had scientists downright giddy.
She's making all the right sounds, and so hopefully there'll be that acoustic recognition that is likely very important to the whole social identity of the group.
And tonight, step 3 has now been reached. Springer is back with her family. She has touched many she came in contact with here on the ferry route. In fact, so much so, there's a few who believe that this is not the last time they'll see young Springer. They believe she'll be back. Live at Fauntleroy, I'm Darren Watkins, King 5 News.
That would be interesting. Thanks, Darren. Keep it here on King 5 for continuing coverage of Springer's return to the wild. We will be going back to British Columbia for a live update at 5:30 as King 5 News tracks Springer's homecoming with her pod tonight at 6:30, 10, and 11.
You're watching King 5 News at 5.
Our top story, after 6 months, it appears a whale of a saga is over.
And what a great and happy ending it is. Springer, the orphaned orca, is back now where she belongs, swimming free in her home waters off British Columbia. King 5's Glenn Farley is live in Canada, where Springer was set free this afternoon. I guess, Glenn, this is what it was all for.
This is what it was all about. This is the bottom line, as they say today. She was released from her net pen at about 2:45. I want to introduce you to somebody very special in all this. This is Dr. David Huff. He is the veterinarian with the Vancouver Aquarium. You have been tracking her health. You helped nurse her back to health for many months now. And you were also very integral in terms of the release. What were you looking for? Well, you said you were on the radio talking to the folks releasing her in the pool and other folks in the boat looking at the other pod.
Well, interesting. I think I had the most high-tension job here. I was sitting manning the radio and relaying information from the people out on the water, from John Ford and Lance Barrett Leonard, who were actually looking at the pod that was going by. I was relaying that information to the people in the net pen. We had 5 or 6 people around Springer trying to figure out if she was excited enough, if the pod was excited enough. And that was really difficult because it all had to happen in a very short time window of about 3 or 4 minutes.
She only arrived here less than 24 hours ago. The hope was to be able to release her the first day. I guess the temptation when she was calling to her pod last night and they were calling back must have been overwhelming, but they didn't want to let her go in the dark. But she said there were basically 3 aunties out there who could take her under their wing.
Glenn, it was absolutely fantastic. In the middle of the day, on the first day possible, the best combination of animals swam by the front of the bay in which Springer was located. And these were a group of animals that had basically 2 or 3 females of reproductive age who could possibly serve as aunties or surrogate mothers to her. So we looked at that. We had quick conversations between 4 or 5 world-renowned killer whale experts. I had given the medical go-ahead. The team was there. And the nice part was it was absolutely unanimous. We would never, ever get a better shot at it than this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have tracked her health since the middle of February after it was discovered kind of who she was. When you first saw her, did you ever think we would be standing here today seeing her rejoin her group?
You know, I don't think I ever verbalized this back in February or March, but I and a lot of the other veterinarians who looked at her never thought we'd be here. She had a lot of really serious health problems, and the good news is that basically all of them, the ketosis, the acetone odor to her breath, her bad skin, the infestation from worms, they have all resolved and contributed to what we have now is a really healthy, robust whale who gained 148 pounds in the last month, having been released today.
Okay. Dr. David Huff, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there you have it. I mean, this was hard to believe when we first saw this whale on January 15th. Again, that we would be here, she would be free once again. Live at Telegraph Cove, British Columbia, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
Safe to say, mission accomplished. Glenn, thank you.